Thank you very much, Reverend. This is Bishop Stuart University Students Open Debate. Today is 4th December 2020. The topic is, this house believes that education cannot wait no matter the circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the rationale of the debate. In other words, why the debate? Since the start of lockdown on institutions of learning, there has been a debate on whether this was the right decision, asserting that students were safer at schools than homes. However, some citizens supported this presidential directive, saying education can wait. Indeed, education waited, and time reached when the government of Uganda partially lifted the lockdown on these institutions and education ceased waiting. Institutions of learning fought hard amidst this crisis to see old sessions end and new sessions begin. This is happening with a few criticisms from a few of the learners saying education can wait until the situation fully normalizes. Shall the situation normalize? If yes, when? Are we using the continued crisis to justify our laxity while at home? A lot of other learners are assertively arguing that possible means should be devised by the authorities for teaching, learning, and assessment to be done and sessions end. As usual, Bishop Stuart University Debate Society comes to provide a platform to all of you to share ideas from the students' body, but also to educate each other on what is better than the other. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say we have a special guest in the house, Dr. Medard Twinamatsko. You are welcome. Dr. Medard Twinamatsko is our special guest. We also have all faculty representatives in the house who will in a short time be giving us their submissions. We as well have attendees who will have time to speak to us as well. For panelists, you will have a maximum of 10 minutes to comprehensively vomit out your minds, as we shall reserve other 3 minutes at the end to make a summary considering what you will have heard from the attendees the next after you. My name is Munzira Chrispus. I am the moderator of this debate today. You are welcome. Allow me say, the debate starts. We shall have our first speaker, who is our guest speaker, and that is Dr. Medard Twinamatsko. Dr. Medard Twinamatsko has a PhD in policy management and natural resource governance, master's development planning from Medard University of Science and Technology, bachelor's Medard University of Science and Technology with first-class honors, diploma in education, secondary from Chambogo University. Dr. Medard Twinamatsko is a policy analyst and development conservation specialist with over 15 years of progressive research, academic engagement, and management, half of which have resulted into a successful implementation of 2 Darwin Initiative projects in collaboration with the International Institute for Environment and Development. Dr. Medard is a senior researcher and a lecturer in the Department of Environment and Livelihood Support Systems and a coordinator for graduate studies, Faculty of Interdisciplinary Studies at Medard University of Science and Technology. That is MUST. He also works as the Deputy Director for the Center of Innovations and Technology, Transfer CITT, MUST. Dr. Medard is an experienced seasonal manager and has held other several managerial positions as the Acting Deputy Director, Doctorate Directorate of Research and Graduate Training, MAST, Associate Director for Postgraduate Studies, and Research Directorate in charge of Research, Innovations, Extensions, and Publications. That is KIU. It's the head of department at both MAST and other universities in Uganda. Child Development Officer for a community-based Compassion International charitable organization, on top of being an executive director of the Center for Research Uptake in Africa that translates research findings into action to community implementation and policy engagement levels. Dr. Medard is highly motivated and deeply committed development conservationist. I want to say, my friends and I want to be like Dr. Medard Twinamatsko when we grow up. He's such a resourceful person. Dr. Twinamatsko, you are welcome. You have 20 minutes to speak to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chrispus. You introduced a very important aspect through which all of us are interested in knowing how the world is and how it ought to be. And I want to appreciate you for being our chair, and most importantly, for your zeal that I've always seen over years. At the same time, I want to appreciate the management of Bishop Stuart University for entrusting me with this opportunity to embark on a very critical but important aspect of our lives, which is called education. And I would like to also appreciate the Public Relations Office for creating avenues for students and staff to be able to articulate their views with utmost levels of engagement, and also appreciating that we are in the new normal, which some people call the new abnormal. We also come to that. But we have always seen Bishop Stuart at the forefront of creating different webinars, as well as facilitating the online teaching under the vacuum learning system, or learning environment. I really feel humbled that a university of Bishop Stuart nature is able to engage learners, but also the world, in such a way that confronts the current challenges that all of us are proud to associate with. And in addition to all that has been done, we can say that the future of Bishop Stuart University would be brighter, because it has treaded on a road that is unavoidable, very inevitable, but at the same time, creating a hope of seeing things move to the direction where the world is moving. And I want to applaud the Vice Chancellor and the Public Relations Office for that big opportunity to engage our learners, but also to engage the world. There have been a number of different online engagements that I have missed, but I believe that this is one of the avenues to make sure that we move to that direction. Now, Mr. Chairman and Modulator, the panelists and the students and staff who are listening to us, this is a very important title or topic of debate. And the debate, to me, takes two dimensions. There is always the side that some people think this is the right side. And unfortunately, that side, some other people look at it as a wrong side. But there is also another group that believes in the side that was not actually visualized, because they think the opposite of what has been stated. And that's what forms a very good intellectual debate, to be able to fuse out at the end of the day, what exactly can we move with? But I also want to note that debates on whichever side are not absolute. So having a topic does not mean that that is it, but it gives a dimension through which you can see arguments flowing in a particular direction. And thirdly, I would like to mention that in understanding the concept of education, we also ought to understand what exactly it is and what it is not. Because to me, education is a holistic aspect through which we look at informal and formal processes coming together for a more meaningful aspect, which is always premised at ensuring change, but at the same time preserving some of the good things we have in society. So education is a holistic concept. It shouldn't be only tagged into the formal dimensions of it, but we should also look at the informal aspects. And if we want to understand that more, we will understand it in the context of it being a process of facilitating learning, but also acquiring knowledge, skills, and values, which are very instrumental for societal change, but at the same time, which are relevant for socioeconomic transformation of different countries. I want to believe that developed and developing countries are not at the same level, especially in the aspect of education. So the sociocultural and economic contexts of education have to be looked into. And in particular, if I can, share a few statistics, when you look at developed countries and developing countries, for instance, the country called Canada in North America is at literacy rates of 99%. But when you compare that with a country like South Sudan, which is currently at 34%, you create an interpretation that there is a lot of disparity in terms of through which education can be understood. But at the same time, that is one dimension of looking at education from the literacy point of view. Uganda currently stands at 76%, compared to United States, which is at 86%, and many countries fall in the same vein. Of course, within the dimension of formal education, we also realize a lot of gender disparities through which women's literacy levels continue to be lower than those of men. But also important to understand is that education is a facilitator of other aspects of society. For them to be fully functional, we need education as a pathway. Because when you look at countries that have the highest literacy rates, they tend to have, at the same time, the highest gross domestic product, which is one of the important measures of understanding how the country is moving progressively. Because like I said, Canada is at 99% of literacy rates, which is an aspect of formal education. But when you look at Canada in terms of its GDP, it's at 1.7 trillion US dollars. And when you compare that with Uganda and countries like South Sudan, South Sudan's GDP is only 12 billion compared to Canada, which is 1.7 trillion in terms of US dollars. So that shows clearly that education, in terms of formal aspects of it, is a very strong precursor and a pathway of achieving socioeconomic transformation. And I want to draw your attention to countries like India that initially had challenges of education in the 1960s. And this also has a history through which education has been perceived by many countries. But when leadership set in and it was able to direct India's socioeconomic growth, we realized a very big change in terms of India's literacy levels, but also the amount of money that currently comprise of its GDP. We realized that initially, especially when I pick lessons of Gandhi, Gandhi was retiring, and here he was asked what he would actually leave for India in his wisdom as a leader. And Gandhi had seen that actually the world was moving supersonically, but there are certain challenges that were stopping socioeconomic transformation and social change. And as a result, many people went to Gandhi to ask what he foresaw as an India's path for socioeconomic development. And they wanted only three reasons or three factors that would facilitate this. And Gandhi, in his wisdom, looked into their faces and told them, people, if you want India to survive for longer and longer, the first point you must consider is education. The second point in my mind that you should consider for India is education. And the third point that I believe you should consider for India is education. So in other words, education formed the three factors that would lead to India's socioeconomic transformation. And interestingly, friends, it is important to note that India's current GDP is right now at 2.7 trillion US dollars. So when you compare it with a country like Burundi, which has only 3% billion USD in terms of its GDP, and you compare with India's current trend, or even China, which is at 13.6 trillion per annum, compared to Burundi, which is at 3 billion, you can realize why education remains key, and it is something that we might not avoid if we want countries to move the right direction. I want to also believe that there are certain elements through which education can be seen as a precursor of growth. One of the important aspects which you and me need to know seriously is that the world is changing at a very supersonic speed. There are many elements through which we cannot just sit back. As you know, the Bible also talks about education, by the way, that education is a key to success. Education creates fundamentals of life. Actual education is life itself. And there is a scholar called Einstein who said, actually, if you want to live, you embrace education, but if you want to die, you avoid education. So all these things rotate around through which we should interpret the most important aspects and purpose of education in life. And I want to argue that what Bishop Stuart and other universities have done in terms of their own pursuance of seeing that learners are not locked physically, but also not cognitively locked, this is a positive sign of us moving and not waiting at a critical time when the world needs education to be embraced. Actually, when you read Proverbs chapter 4, verse 13, in order to understand and substantiate my facts, you realize that the book in the Bible called Proverbs, which is a very good gift of understanding, it is actually a very good privilege to read Proverbs in the Bible. When you use the Good News Bible, it says, always remember what you have learned. Your education is your life. Your education is your life. That is the Bible. In the scholarly world, we understand that a scholar called Andy said that if you think education is expensive, you need to try ignorance. That is Andy mentioning. I have earlier mentioned about Einstein, where he says, once you stop learning, you start dying, you know. So that creates a ground through which we can understand these aspects of us not waiting, but moving to that direction through which our countries can realize socioeconomic transformation. Now, in the gist and context of this debate, I want to believe that the greatest aspiration to drive us to this important topic was in line with the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has created and ushered in a new dimension which was unexpected. So the question is, now that certain measures have been undertaken to stop certain activities or to hold them temporarily as we wait for the new normal, do we have to wait on the education part? Having seen its importance and purpose, my take would be yes and no. And I would like to justify why I think it is a yes that is now in support of the way our statement in the topic has been stated. In a yes, first of all, we realize that the world is moving dynamically. And the world has embraced different education paths differently. Whereas in developing countries, when we realized the time countries announced their lockdown, we were at a certain level through which our e-learning platforms were not greatly embraced. But in developed countries, we realized that their education fabric and landscape was already structured in a way that it might or would handle any unforeseen disasters and pandemics, which form now the circumstances we are talking about. Because quickly, when the president of the Republic of Uganda announced a lockdown in March 2020 and sent all students back to school, I quickly contacted my friends in the United Kingdom, where their way of life was locked down, but their education life continued. Students moved towards, e-learning and also moving forward towards embracing their learning environments that were already structured and were accommodative. But developing countries were quite struggling to see that they fit in this world of unexpectation, because no one expected this. I know personally that the lockdown and closure of schools had a very big impact through which students perceived it, but also moved towards living a new life, which to them is actually an abnormal life. Because as you realize, the trend for rural-urban migration has been on high, and there is that youth gradually where you realize that the youth no longer want to fit in the village. But the village at this point was actually a very safe place where everyone had to move. And I want to bring the attention of the members here in the debate that we need to understand that in all circumstances, whether east, west, north, or south, home is the best. And the concept of home here has been really seen as more of villages. Even when you lose a beloved one and you have a very good mansion in town, but you end up going back to the roots. So that also ushers in a dimension of understanding how safer the villages are in terms of these pandemics. But the point I'm trying to drive home is that many challenges emerged as a result of closure. Many students went to the villages, there was no option but to move. But schools that were already prepared for this challenge in developed countries continued to embrace e-learning and e-platforms. And I want also to note that one of the universities in Uganda, Uganda Christian University, was actually at it at that time. And they said for us, we are ready to even conduct our online classes and exams until government said, no, hold on, because this has to be a uniform process. So what does this show? It shows that since we are living in the same world under the globalization concept, there is no way we can lock one part of the world and say the other one will keep on moving. Because at the end of the day, we are competing for the same global environment through which we must exercise our levels of competence and compete favorably with the world at large. So that means education cannot wait. We must embrace these e-learning platforms and be able to adopt them, conceive them, and move on. Even on that note, when schools were announced reopened, there were still many challenges through which some of the parents, educationists and other concerned people are saying, but why can't we wait? Why do we have to rush and open schools? But remember, the world is moving forward. There are some schools that are moving forward. There are some universities that are progressing in the region and at the global level. So we cannot wait to say, for us, we'll keep in lockdown until things normalize, because that normalization is not going to be possible. The other important part is that this COVID-19 pandemic is actually something that might be here to stay, not a temporary visitor. So if you understand that we have to live with it, just like we have lived with HIV/AIDS, like we have lived with flu and coughs, then you cannot keep at home until things normalize at the point you think they would have normalized, when actually that point will never exist. So education in that case cannot wait for circumstances to normalize, when circumstances that we think may normalize are actually somehow permanent circumstances. Of course, even when you look at the trend, there is no clear path of getting a vaccine, and there's no formal process that has been announced in that way. But on that note, I want to realize that the investment in key educational platforms that would facilitate a very excellent learning environment is very inadequate in developing countries, and that hampers the way things have been moving, because we have a number of students who are unable to find formidable infrastructure systems that can promote e-learning platforms. But we also have a lot of financial incapacitation by different countries, especially institutions in those countries that we call low developed countries, which are unable to create a very strong infrastructure network that is able to embrace e-learning platforms. So as a result, we need to look into how to build a very strong base of infrastructure development, and more especially if we get assistance of this nature, because I think a lot of money has been collected in one or the other to support some of these trends. So how we prioritize the money we get and assistance that we get is very important. And one of the key areas of investment would be education. Some of you have gone into other countries who have been at various levels of international arena. You've seen that even the moment you step on an international airport, you already have access to free internet, So that is very challenging. But I want to note that even now, as we conduct this webinar, there are a number of people who are struggling to join in, and the heart was actually willing to join in. So there are still challenges, both at structural level, but also at individual level, to embrace the e-learning platforms. The other point of education not waiting is in line with the kind of aspects through which education can be seen. Because to me, education is beyond coming to a university, it is beyond coming to a school or coming to a formal institution. Even during this lockdown, the biggest question is, how did we cope up with other aspects of education that are non-formal? For instance, this is a time to actually think critically. When you get the disaster at home, your mind and levels of cognitive engagement have to increase, because this is not a new and it's not a very normal situation that you may need to take easily. So the question is, what were our students doing during this time of lockdown? Were they innovating? Were they sleeping? Were they undertaking vital agricultural projects that would actually embrace their way of life? Were they thinking about business ideas? Were they incubating them? So these are all pertinent questions that come alongside the challenges of developing countries, where developing countries tend to run away from facts and they move at only theoretical basis of education, which are a little bit challenging. Because right now, a number of people had their contracts suspended. A number of people were stopped to come to their workplaces. A number of people had issues to do with moving forward with formal engagement. So how best can developing countries embrace technology, embrace research that is quality, but also embrace innovations, which are now unavoidable? I want to give you a scenario that in developing countries, when this pandemic set in, one of the colleagues at the International Institute for Environment and Development told me that there were many publications that came out in a very short period of time. Can you imagine in one institution having over 1,000 publications coming in a period of 3 months? But what did developing countries do? Did they actually publish about coronavirus? Did they move on to research and find out innovative ways through which coronavirus can be counteracted? The answer is yes, to a smaller extent and not a bigger extent. Because most of, even the renowned scientists had to run away and go to the village. And you ask them, they say, we are in lockdown. But that shouldn't be the case. The case should be that the new pandemic, the new circumstances would usher in a new dimension of thinking. Just as you know, in colonial periods, when Africans were colonized, they somehow locked their minds to theoretical learning. But after colonization, we should be able to see a trend through which Africa regains its socioeconomic and intellectual fabric that can help it to move from one level to another. Because Africa had a very strong African chemistry, a very strong rooted innovation and technology. In my local village, I know some of the blacksmiths that used to churn out many, many important tools that we use in life. Panga, spear, many of that nature. So to what extent does the new generation adapt these circumstances that may hold education, formal education to move to the level that we might want it to be? So in the interest of time, I would look at that level as well, that we should understand through which we can also opt other mechanisms of education that can fast track the changes that we need to see in the world. As we realized, South Korea and Taiwan and other countries like Singapore were at the same levels of development like Uganda. They had the same GDP in 1960. But right now, South Korea and Singapore have moved from the very low part of the world into mid-term progresses in terms of their domestic product, but also in terms of their per capita income. And this is very challenging and a shame, especially in countries where Uganda has been competing with such countries, but now you see Uganda is left behind, and some other countries in developing countries have been left behind. So the question of innovation, technology transfer, but also other informal approaches like business creation, embracing agricultural commercialization and transforming some of the things we thought are not very relevant to our nations is very critical at this time when we are saying education cannot wait, because education is beyond formal education. Now, let me embark also on the other part, where I think education, some of the proponents who say education may wait because of certain circumstances. So the only argument there I see is that it can only wait when we are planning and strategizing to create an environment through which education can be a success, through which education can transform us. So that process of waiting should be embarked with the process of systematic planning and strategizing through which education can be facilitated well. And what are those elements? This is in line with creating a very strong infrastructure system that will embrace e-learning platforms, that will embrace mechanisms of getting internet connectivity, that can embrace key elements to do with research and innovation. We also need to build the capacity of researchers and motivate them as developing countries. As at a national level, we can create funds that can facilitate research, but also facilitate innovations and be able to, result into social economic transformation of our societies. So as we wait for education to come in, we need to create mechanisms through which the environment favors researchers and academicians to be able to move forward and faster towards embracing the other elements of education that are beyond teaching and learning. And in that sense, I have seen a very big controversy here in developing countries that when academics and researchers come in with a critical mind, they are always tagged in as opposition. Now, the element of science policy that is driven by science comes in. Because most policies in developing countries have not embraced research as a pathway through which these policies can be formulated. Because a policy should point at a certain challenge in society that requires an address or a redress or a solution. Like now we need a policy on addressing these pandemics or risk management and mitigation. So such policies must be informed by research, scientific research. So in this case, you have the policy making and implementation, which is informed by research and innovation at one point. So the two are going to be synergizing each other in terms of how we come up with a very good change that we want to see in society. So leaders also need to understand that the mismatch of research and policy is one of the challenges through which decisions, wrong decisions will be made, and this will not be fundamental for our socioeconomic transformation. I would also like to look at the angle through which we need to facilitate mechanisms through which leadership can be stronger in these institutions of higher learning and be able to be rigorous and be able to make decisions, right decisions that everyone is going to embrace and be happy with. So that is the part that I see where education can wait. So as education waits, we need to rethink through which we create a learning ground that is going to embrace the education that has been in waiting. And lastly, Mr. Chairman and modulator and members, in the interest of time, I would like to point at a very critical, conclusive remark through which all these ideas can be intertwined to come up with right grounds of engagement. Now, the current circumstances create about three scenarios. One is, how do we differentiate universities from high schools? Universities are not high schools in nature. High schools embrace only learning, but universities embrace the other aspects through which they function. And one of them is learning and teaching, which is actually a good characteristic that links them to high schools. But the second one is the element of research and innovation. That is what universities should focus on and look at carefully. And the third is the issue of community outreach and engagement, so that the universities do not just lock their educational processes by tagging them only to teaching and learning, but should also look at the other domains of research and innovation, and at the same time look at community engagement. I have colleagues from other universities who were asking me, how is the lockdown I told them I'm not in lockdown because when last teaching and learning stopped, I continued with a very good dimension of engaging the communities using, of course, the social processes and approaches and observing the standard operating procedures. So I continued implementing projects in Bwindi with the Batwa communities, and many other of my projects continued. But I have also continued to undertake innovations and research that inform different aspects of policy domain. So my point here is that we need to embrace the other functions of the university beyond teaching and learning. And as we embrace it, we need to put the students at the center of this, so that the students are at the center of research, students are at the center of innovations, and students are at the center of community engagement. The second last point is in line with the competitive and comparative advantages that exist within our domain of global network. Because right now we know a student of Bishop Stuart or a student of Mbarara University, a student of Uganda Christian University will compete internationally with a student from the University of Antwerp in Belgium, with the University of, KU Leuven. So they are going to compete either for scholarship opportunities or they are going to compete for employment opportunities at a global level. So we cannot therefore wait and say developing countries must lock themselves out of this process and then later come up. Because at the end of the day, we will find we have a very big controversy where developing countries have continued to develop and developing countries have actually retarded in terms of their socioeconomic growth. And lastly, is in terms of handling these pandemics, that we know that pandemics may actually be permanent. They may not be temporary. Like this COVID may be a pandemic that we may live with, not necessarily keeping the mind locked and also making things retard because we want to wait for COVID-19 to normalize. Every person who has told me that maybe the post-COVID season, I say there is no post-COVID season. What we need to do is to adapt. And this is the language that we normally use in climate change aspects. We say you can mitigate, but if you fail to mitigate, then you adapt. Because adaptation is one of the key aspects through which life remains functional and not locked down. Therefore, friends who are listening to me, I need you to understand that for education to be successful, physical lockdown should not mean cognitive lockdown. We should move forward, use the mind to be co-creative, to be able to be instrumental, and be able to mitigate some of these challenges that come our way. Therefore, rise and shine and keep the African spirit and the spirit of developing countries alive. I thank you very much, Mr. Modulator, the panelists, members of management, and students and staff who are listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Wow, what a submission. Great statistics, great submission. Physical lockdown isn't cognitive lockdown. I repeat, physical lockdown isn't cognitive lockdown. Thank you, Doctor. I have a question to ask you, and then we shall switch to the panelists. There has been a hypothesis or a tentative conjecture that nothing defeats a physical class. What is your say?
Yeah, I want to appreciate you, Mr. Modulator, Mr. Munzira, on that very important question. Physical classes are very important because we understand in the physical class environment, we are able to interface with even realities to do with understanding the learner's psychological and cognitive needs. That is very important. And we also appreciate that there are some subjects or courses that may not necessarily be conducted online. For instance, practical courses, in laboratories, practical courses in simulation. We cannot have this online. We cannot have community engagement online. For example, we need to physically go to the communities. We need to physically do internship. We need to physically do school practice. So what I am thinking about is what they call blended learning. Blended learning means that you're embracing physical learning as well as e-learning. So at the same time, the two are synergized. Like you realize, right now we have a challenge of conducting classes online because universities do not have the mechanisms through which students are able to be monitored well as they do classes from their homes. So my suggestion here would be that universities need to rethink about the e-learning that is blended with physical interface, but also design strategies of formulating simulation materials, because I have seen developed countries doing simulation, let's say, on how you do surgery on the body. So you are able to simulate that and have it done even when you don't have a physical body. So technology is very relevant. Blended learning is the way to go because we cannot avoid the physical interface at some point. So developing countries can only embrace blended learning. They cannot embrace complete e-learning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. I hope this question has been puzzling a lot of people here, and I hope they have an objective idea about it. Dr. Medard Twinamatsko is our special guest. I will ask you kindly, Doctor, to keep with us, listen to what other people in the house are speaking, and at the end, I will give you minutes to rebut what they will have said or react or bring several additives.
Okay.
Right now, we have panelists, and these are faculty representatives. We have Ampomuza Dalton, who is representing Faculty of Agriculture, Environmental Sciences and Technology. We have Kamugisha Andrew, who is representing Faculty of Law. We have Magara James, who is representing a Faculty of Business, Economics and Governance. We have Atumanya Doris, a representative from Faculty of Education, Arts and Media Studies. We have Ninyikiriza Gloria, a representative of Faculty of Nursing and Health Sciences. All these are panelists. After these people, we are going to attendees. I hope the attendees have what to speak as well. I am beginning with Kamugisha Andrew, a council, Deputy President, Debate Society, Bishop Stuart University. Kamugisha Andrew, you have 10 minutes to bring your views underway. You're welcome.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. To our chief guest, I love the submission that you made. And on the various topic, I'm Kamugisha Andrew, second law student. And currently, my views about the education cannot wait. I have points against and points that support it. But I would like to discuss it in a context of universities that have not yet reached the capabilities to adapt this kind of system. According to Bishop Stuart, we have a population of around 20,000 students. But if you're to compare with the universities that have taken on this kind of system or this kind of technology, these are universities that have already prepared. For example, like the likes of UC, like our chief guest said that UC took a good responsive to the online system. You find that their requirement is that each student must have a laptop. But unlike it other universities, you're to find the ratio of students with laptops or gadgets that could run this online system is hardly impossible. And this system happens to run in areas where you find students had really left their areas of study where they could access free internet, where they could access data. Now, it becomes problematic if you tell a student, let's say, for example, at the border districts, like, for example, Isindro and other far areas that cannot access network, to have an online education system. Now, it creates classes, which classes I'm saying that it will create people who can access and people who cannot. Now, as the chief guest had earlier said this, he said that education should be inclusive of all students, or of all people that could participate in. But now the question comes in that what is the necessity of education if it cannot inclusively add all the students? That means that we shall have the most favored students of the system and those that shall be lagged behind. What do I mean that the students that shall be left out? We find that in certain universities, for example, universities that have not adapted the nature of online system, for example, I'll give a case study because I want to refer from the university that I come in, and I give you of the picture of how it looks like and how it has shaped the university education and at a larger expense. Now, you find that in Bishop Stuart University, we find ourselves that students do not have even clear measures or have not got a self-awareness policy on how to run the system. Secondly, we find that there has been no provision or there has been no timely awareness or educative policies on how these people could run the online system. Not even to detach more about the system is that the system itself has a broken measure that it's not all time on, but it's on and off. Now, it also creates another assumption that why now? Because you remember when they closed the universities, online education was introduced prior to the release of the timetable. Now, what happened that students, most of them, had no access to the system. Even more to add on that, that even the students themselves didn't find a pleasure to operate this system. One, they had inadequacies, as the chief guest had said. Most parents had been laid off from their work. They didn't have money to run the costly data. As you know, Zoom is a very expensive thing. Now, a parent would ask themselves, why would I pay 1.8 million for a student that has the same money that I pay for a physical class? Now, there has been no measure for the university to guide on how these students could preferably reduce either on the tuition fee and give them like free data. For the likes of UCU was given free data, but I'm giving the likes of our university. Why you find even the students who had managed to access the gadgets didn't have data, and even those who had tried to access data, it couldn't sustain them for the smooth run of the online education. Now, how does this become problematic? That you find you want inclusivity of all students, you want them to attend and do all examinations at universities so as that every student could go on a form schedule. Now, this does not indulge or this does not involve all the students at all participation level, because you find themselves that some don't have, others have, and others completely don't have. Now, this would be a question to the chief guest. How could we best inclusively, not leaving out anyone or not to bring a system that will favor the people who are elite or the people who can access? Because if this education keeps like this, then it will keep out some students out of the education system simply that they don't have the materials and the resources. Now, it becomes problematic that shortly after, it didn't even last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the university brings in examinations. Now, it becomes problematic that the parent who has been struggling to pay data, who has been struggling to buy OTT for the student to access the online education, it becomes even more hard out of the blue. He has not been working, he has not been employed, he does not have any single penny. He has to send his parent to a university, that's transport. He has to send to he has sent his student to the hostel where he has defaulted for months and months. He has also to cater for his son meals. I've not even reached a point of school fees. Now, you come to a quotation of saying now all these expenses must be catered for in a meantime of 3 weeks where the student must do the exams. Now, it becomes problematic of a student who has not even accessed a single time or a single duration of education for that time. It becomes even simply hard that some students find themselves indulged not even to access these materials to read. But this is why you find that they have to clear all the expenses. This is why you find out the students have to also attend the lectures online, which even have not happened yet. Because if you're to count the lectures I've attended, there is none that has happened. The one that nearly wanted to happen, electricity went off due because the lecturer couldn't access Wi-Fi. We missed a lecture. Now, I'll come to a question now. why a parent will ask you, why would I pay 1.8 that I would have paid for the similar physical lecture, for the similar lecture that I would pay in the normal days? Now, it comes to the question of accountability. How is it worthy when I'm paying for the lecture has not taught my students? My student still hasn't even read, he hasn't accessed the reading materials, but he must do the exams. Now, here comes to a quotation where you find education has lost the meaning, just because that we feel it's a high time we should embrace technology, which I don't detach from. But can we embrace technology with inclusivity of all students? Because if you're to say that come what come may, students must do online education, then I'll come to pose a question to you that if you think students will do all the online education, then are they ready for the online exams? And if they are ready, does it indulge them? Or it's going to produce half-baked students all in favor for online education to perceive on? Now, it becomes even more problematic that you find that even when they reach at campus, the materials need money. Now, the money which is not there, because even the student is struggling to pay tuition, he's struggling to pay hostel fees, he's struggling even to cater for his own feeding expenses. Now, it does not even detach from the fact that even the students do not have the money to buy for the course outline materials. Now, it becomes even hard for a student now to read and also to continue and discuss on how they can also meet their students. One, that this is an era of COVID, meeting is hard. Secondly, they find themselves that the culture, because we have not been given enough time to brief learn, because unlike for UC, we are given home tech exams, but the approaches of universities have been ununified. Some are giving physical exams, others are giving take-home exams. Now, how would the credibility of grading and teaching be invisible or be similar to all those universities when you find some of them are catered halfly, others have been given in a different way of assessment? Now, it will bring to a question of some are doing physical, which they have not been prepared for. Others have been given time to read, even to do the exams from home, even a full month of taking precautions on how they can do it better. Now, I would not love to be like a goat or a dog that does not appreciate its master's work efforts. I love the zeal our university has done, but it would have been in a better form if how they could have distributed the reading materials, the way they distribute admission forms. You see the case study point, you find that universities find it easier to stipulate the information of admission forms than administration of reading notes on how they do it in lockdown. I love this is that they went on TVs and radios, but if you ask how many people tuned into those radios they are, because one of the radios they chose is likely even not similar heard of, because most of the radios they use, some of them are inaccessible. You used to find the students asking, has the university thought of the online education? And yet these were things that were passing on social media, but some of the students were unprivileged to access of. Now, me in my own capacity, I thought that the students right now, some of them are not ready. But due to the bandwagon that yes, let's do for the exams, let's hurry and do them because we have no option left out, you'll find that we shall have half-baked students who have left classes. Because there is a quotation I always ask teachers and lecturers. The semester that you have taught for 3 months or 4 months for students to understand and cram, you want them to study it for 3 weeks. Now, what's the burden? Now, the burden is that the principles have not been explained or quotationed into their heads. Everyone will understand the principalities on how best they think and on how best they understand them. Now, the quotation comes into the exam where a student will explain or understand or will bring a cram work method that he will put the principle on how best comes to his senses. And now here it comes to the lecturer who has not taught a student, but he will mark the student on how principally he would have taught the lesson. Now, here comes the issue of accountability. Now, how will the students and the teachers negotiate on the terms of education implement, or in the terms of how they could colonize or could harmonize on how the students learned and how the lecturers understood it? Now, here comes to a balance of the table that we need to bridge a gap that, yes, we have accepted online education has happened, but have we given enough time for students to analyze and intake all this? Because you will not tell me that someone will have to study 6 course units, for example, a student in 3 weeks, where these 6 course units are taught for more than 3 months to understand them at their best. Now, here comes the issue of accountability. How will the lecturers and our leaders, our student leaders, be included to provide accountability, because as earlier told you that 1.8 has been paid for the physical education, and still you have paid the 1.8 for the online education. Now, the university has an obligation to answer how does that money help a student, or what's the importance of that money? Are the exams going to be facilitated by any other person, or have these students have been equipped with the knowledge on how to approach the exams? Now, lastly, as I conclude and as I sum up, is that we must embrace technology. But if you embrace technology, let it be inclusive of all students. Because one, it hurts and pains for a student who has studied for more than 3 years or 2 years to be dropped out just because of a mere technology, or just because of the untimely decisions of trying to join the bandwagon of other universities. I'll give you universities that have succeeded in online education. I'll give you the likes of Cavendish, the likes of UCU, the likes of MOOC. But these universities reportedly or attached the accessibility of this of online education immediately, and also equipped their students, because one, these universities had an earlier upbringing of how to explain to their students on how to equip them with technology equipments, that in the here case that if they may lack, they had bought even an education of self-assessment or of self-research. But now you're going to go to universities of Ankole University, Kabale University. These are universities that face challenges that even Wi-Fi in their campus is unlimited to be accessed to. Like the professor had said that in some countries, even when you step on the airport, you find there is Wi-Fi. Now, we must appreciate that we are developing countries, and we must not take it for granted that yes, since we are developing, we should not develop as a country. But in developing, we must not say that a certain class shall develop and the lower class shall continue retarded. Now, if these classes happen to be, then the system loses its meaning to justify the cause. Because if you're saying that you need to educate all students should access all the materials to learn, then some access it and some others do not access it. Then I come to the question of, does the system justify its means? Do the means of all students getting accessibility of the best education they would have be cognizant of how they could understand best? Then, as in conclusion, I believe that some universities were impounded on the education based of the most that they hadn't accessed the system. I've been given to the knowledge that most of the students have discussed, some of them have dropped out. One, that they cannot access the materials. Two, their parents don't have enough money. Three, that it was so quick to put the exams, for example, in Bishop Stuart, for students to register, to read, to pay all these exams, to pay tuition, to pay hostel fees in a time blink. Because we find that Bishop Stuart most of the students come from far district countries. Some of them have faced hardships, even to have food to run for their stomachs during the lockdown. Now, I would love if the university would come to a quotation of saying, yes, we have faced challenges at university, but can we give them one mark? For example, like MOOBs. MOOBs finalists did the exams, third years are studying to do the exams, but second years and first years have been allowed, given the grace period, to read in the next year and do the exams in January. Now I would ask myself, why doesn't our university adapt a policy of saying, you know what, 1.8 is too much for a student to pay? Why don't they reduce it, and then the money they could have used, these students could at least forge ways on how to prepare themselves? For some of them, even as we are clearing, some of them are still deep down in the villages, still trying to clear for them, or still trying to come through. So me, I'm begging, can universities harmonize with students? Or before they implement these policies, what's the essence of the guild representatives or the leaders in position to consult and also to ask them how better they could better education, other than streamlining or brainstorming on the betterment of their individuals?
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for speaking your mind. Indeed, you spoke your mind. I have a question. I have two alternatives, and I want you to pick which one is better than the other. Knowing what to do and knowing how to do it, which one is better than the other?
Knowing how to do it.
Knowing how to do it is better than knowing what to do.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I hope our guest speaker A special guest today has been noting some of the questions
Yes.
Kamugisha Andrew has been shooting. I want to welcome Ampumuza Dalton, a representative from the Faculty of Agriculture, Environmental Sciences and Technology.
Thank you very much. My name is Dalton Ampumuza, and just like from the faculty that has tested the system and its applicability, I am representing the faculty based on a few principles that we are going to argue about in today's debate. And of course, we are talking about education in developing countries, but the fact that we have not looked at which education we are looking at. One, it is in that education process, we either facilitate learning or the learning process. Now, the question is whether is the learning process happening, and as well, whether the learning process will need schooling. And our fact is that we shall look at whether the challenge today is about schooling or the learning process. But now the challenge basically in this debate was not about whether it's about learning or schooling, but because in education we are looking at two things, whether it is schooling or learning. But I basically want to narrow down my debate based on two factors of learning and schooling. Schooling would basically need being at the university physically and maybe being taught. Since we are talking about education, and now we are not narrowing our debate, just like the earlier speaker talked about a case example of Bishop Stuart University. I just want to grow it a little bit wider than that. So if education has happened in other universities rather than just schooling, because we've seen other universities that have had the learning process happen online, and maybe this has successfully been done. But of course, other universities that haven't been able have done schooling where we have seen students get back to universities and are doing the normal processes. But this has been the most effective way for any developing country to have students at school. But this is the fact that we are looking at which circumstances that we should not wait no matter the circumstances. The fact is that the status quo of the circumstances is happening is that we are in a pandemic, and which all of us have eventually agreed that it is a new normal, and which we have to learn with. But we have seen other circumstances in other developing countries like Syria, like in Somalia, where the education is very low, but we understand there are circumstances before have been due to war and other factors like famine and drought. But what happened in those days and what happened in such countries? We understand in countries like Syria, in countries like Somalia, Tunisia, where there has been low, education levels have gone down. But we also understand where in other countries that have been at stake and have been at worries like South Korea, but have the best education sectors. But we understand that that was their norm, that was the circumstance that we were in. But in a country like Uganda, and basically in my own university, we understand the new norm is that we are in a pandemic where possibly the schooling would be hard. Basically, I would want to tackle a few things that were earlier mentioned in the first speakers, where the first speaker, doctor, mentioned about he basically narrowed his debate about the economic policies and what has been done. But I want to bring it into the moral sector. What happens if students do not go to school? What happens if we have to wait? This is where I want to narrow down my debate. You understand that before education in 18s, we had about 12% of the world was the one that was literate. But as of now, we understand 17% vis-a-vis the 12% is now illiterate. The literate levels have grown to 17%. We understand that now the biggest percentage of people are learned in the world. But you see, education, according to the Sustainable Development Goals, has been made an independent issue. So in the United Nations program, which means it is a key issue to understand about, and has made it being made independent. It means we must live with education, because on the moral sector that I want to tackle about, it is if we do not have education, if we do not have schools opened, what happens? We understand other marriages have happened, and we have witnessed even from our own circles where our fellow students have chosen to go for marriages. We understand there are other challenges where prostitution, diseases will come in, and the moral sector would say that we have more challenge that would come along if we choose to wait. But if we are to not to wait, because my argument is that schools should open, and we are looking at ways that we should open. Of course, in other developing countries where they have better facilities put to be able to have schools running. Unfortunately, in my own country, which we also refer to as a developing country, but we also understand that we must do education, not the schooling, but now rather to have a better life and health systems to compare with education. You have to do the education and the online learning. But we understand there are challenges that have come along with having online learning. But I think these are minor challenges, because in some universities, right from my own faculties that I'm representing in today's debate, is that this has been happening. We've had online learning before, though this has not been able to accessible to all the parts of the university and all the departments and faculties as well. But I think what must be done is now we should encourage every student to get to the new norm, because we've all have already accepted it's a new norm. However, whereas Mr. Kamugisha Andrew from the Faculty of Law came in and said there are a few challenges that we looked at, the accountability challenges. We understand we reflect the new norm. This is where accountability has to come in. No one was sure, and most especially most students had paid, if a few had paid as well, but the accountability would come in. But you remember the doctor in the first half talked about the policy formulation vis-a-vis the research. Of course, I think this online learning must come with a policy. This is where I want to rely my debate on which policy has been put up for an online learning, because even when it is applicable in other universities, is there any advantage that even the universities that are less privileged will have an opportunity to have it going on? So if this has not been done, then I think the burden goes to the National Council for Education for a policy, and then universities to take over that policy. That is where I think the problem relies on. But you see, in other countries, such policies have not been there, but they're developing countries, but technology has been part of their learning processes. So even when there have not been policies, there have been studying. But in a country like us in Uganda, where we need, because everything is married towards politics, everything is married to the political gains, but we understand if we left that aside, what can be done? What can be done is that we surely need to have a policy to help these students who possibly have a problem with tuition. We also understand that we have lecturers that are teaching in different universities, but also they are in the new norm, and they want to protect their lives against the pandemic that is affecting everyone. Also, we can have a policy that will help them. They do not need to physically come to the universities. They can stay in one center university, and then they choose to have the other students study. But also, we also must understand as the policy gets in, we have a lot that come along with it. We understand that the policy would, if it would work with the online learning, there is what the online learning has to be done. Well, as we talked about research in the first part of the debate, we also must understand that research must go along to those, especially the system developers. If the systems that we have they been catering for the online learning? Is it a visible study that this is capable for having all the interaction facilities within the system? Because you understand other universities, just like our own, it is, I can even call it a notes dispository, where we just have notes and pick notes, get notes, and maybe questionable. But we need an existing system where we have a physical interaction. It might not be a physical interaction, but where we can have an interaction face-to-face, but however much it would be an online interaction. We also need to give the developers a chance to have the applicability, to see whether this is applicable in such universities, because you understand, even when these systems are applicable, they need to have devices that they work with. Have we had an opportunity that iPhone users have a capability to have mobile application for such a system? Have we had an opportunity that the mobile users of the Android systems are capable of having such systems? And in the end of it all, are we looking at the cost in the long run, the cost of data, the cost of electricity? Well, when we understand that in villages where where most students come from do not have electricity, do not have data, and this has not been thought of. So the applicability of the system, I also have to agree that with Kamugisha and where he talked about, they have been so much quick, especially to my own university, in choosing to have physical exams after a few days of online teaching, which itself has not been effective because it talks about the point of inclusivity. Has every student been part of this? Which we understand, no, they haven't been part, because under circumstances that I did mention about, circumstance of electricity, circumstance of data, which has not been a success to them. But of course, that we've said what can be done. What can be done is we want to encourage every student by providing them a tuition levy, that those that haven't been able to manage to finish tuition before these exams, they should be given an opportunity to sit for exams and clear later alone, because since we agree that this has been so quick for them, we also need to understand that this has come in a time when parents have faced challenges, where the contracts have been terminated, where they have no jobs running, and that itself means that there is no possibility that tuition will be paid 100% as soon as possible. Then I think also the other outstanding challenge that has not been solved with the online learning, or as well as in the developing countries, there has not been a visibility study whether this will be applicable. Because if you say in a country like Uganda, where the biggest population that have mobile access have phones that do not have internet connectivity, because we understand 25 million people in Uganda are able to access phones, but about 12 million people do not have smartphones. And a smartphone would be the cheapest mobile device for an online studying. But we understand that these people do not surely have such devices. And if we find about 12 million people, and we understand we have 15 million students that are surely going to take up education, so it means basically this would not be applicable. But I think the government who should come on at this exact point, that even when we're talking about having effective education, what the government has done, it should levy taxes on mobile devices, especially on smartphones. Maybe it should provide gadgets that are capable of helping students, maybe to universities at a favorable price, and then students can be able to pay. But you also must understand that in other countries where education has been happening, such has not been also there. But of course, within the pandemic, this has been brought up. I also want to give a case scenario that in countries like South Korea and Singapore, where you have to get through a tough education, where the systems have to teach you beyond academic classes, where you surely need to have practical sessions, because the universities are best like industrial universities, where I'm talking about a student who does computer science, does not necessarily want to believe that he feeds on theory, he has to do practical. And you see the practicability of such courses will be so hard, like where I understand my nursing students will find it very hard to have this education gets to, where education students who do math would be very hard to have an interactive session on such a system that BSU already has. Well, as that will be done, I think what we need to do is simulation, as mentioned within the first speaker. And as I may conclude, what else could be done? We already have online systems being made, and what can be done to inclusively encourage every course that get in, especially engineering students. We can do simulation and virtual reality added onto this. And of course, tuition should be levied, because we understand we shall not have our full time on universities. Otherwise, I want to encourage us to get to the new norm and have a better education for all, because we cannot live without education. Thank you very much, and the best to the other speakers.
Thank you very much, Darton Ampumuza. Issues of accountability. We have university authorities in the house. I hope you're taking notes, and thereafter, these students will need a feedback, could be after today or after next week, but there is a purpose we made this debate happen. Members in the gallery, we have a chat room where you can go and put your mind. If you want to complement, supplement, or do anything, clarify on a certain issue, you have a provision. Go to the chat room and do that. This is from Richard Nwenyesiga. Thank you, BSU, for this step. Students, please embrace technology regardless of the challenges that come along. Technology cuts costs, it's convenient and real time. Now, it's incumbent to the university to make sure there is stable internet in the university. Believe me or not, the world is going digital. That is Richard. Thank you, Richard. If you have a question to ask to any of the panelists, we also have Q&A, where you can go and put your question. Ampumuza Dalton, before you go, I am giving you the question I gave to Andrew. I want to know what exactly is real. And at the end, by the end of the debate, I will know. Knowing what to do and knowing how to do it, which one is better than the other, Dalton?
Thank you very much. That sounds a realistic question, but I think knowing what to do would at the end lead you to doing what is right. So my answer is knowing what to do.
Knowing what to do is better than knowing how to do it. That is from Dalton. Okay, thank you. We are switching on to some other panelists. And I need to be gender sensitive this time around. I want to welcome Atumanya Doris, faculty representative, Faculty of Education, Arts and Media Studies. Doris. Yeah, as we are trying to connect to Doris.
Thank you so much, moderator today. My name is Doris Atumanya. I'm representing the Faculty of Education. According to how people have been discussing our topic today, I'm basing it on the social status of the point. We are looking at the issue of education should not wait no matter the circumstances. And I say yes. Why? Because of how one of the panelists talked about why education should not wait. Because we have faced very many things since the lockdown started. Number one, that is early pregnancies, school dropouts, increased fights in families, suicidal cases in societies, because students have lacked what to do. They have faced psychological torture with their parents actually at homes. So that's why I say no, education should not wait. Then there is a question of what were students doing during the lockdown? They were doing nothing, only to sleep, eat, relax. So the more education stays, the more education waits, the more students are suffering. Number one, the way they take long in schools, the way they take long at home, it's going to affect their studies coming next time. When you claim that education should wait, then they open up next time. Then I'm talking about the question of roles of different people in this scenario. We are facing a pandemic which has took long, almost 6, 7, 8 months, and we are asking the roles of different people. Number one, lecturers, teachers, they have different roles. Parents have different roles. Learners have different roles. Officials of different universities, schools, they also have different roles. So me as a person, I'm saying if everyone plays their role, it will be the best, because there are those people, parents, who are willing to facilitate everything it takes for a student to study, whether online, whether VLE, whether anything. In case if at all the student is going to be studying, parents are willing to take it. But there are those learners who are saying, no, for us, we don't want online learning. For us, we don't want e-learning. We just want physical classes. Something that is not going to happen, because the world is changing. We are changing to digital, so we cannot claim to wait until COVID goes. What if it stays for long? So me, I'm thinking that if everyone plays their roles, it is going to be effective and it's going to help us. Because when the officials praise their roles. They claim to say, no, we can do online learning, we can study. And you as a learner, you put in your time, you invest in your time, you talk to your parent, you explain everything. It is going to help. Because of the reasons I told you, why education cannot wait, we are saying because some regions which are developed countries and which are developing countries mostly, they are trying very hard to take what is happening. They're trying very hard to adhere to the situation. So we cannot wait, we cannot claim to say education should wait when the rest of the people are going ahead, when the rest of the countries, when the rest of the areas, when the rest of the schools are moving ahead, and you claim Bishop Stuart University should stay behind. No, that cannot help the university, else it will be tarnishing everything. So we, personally, I think when other areas are developing, it's also Bishop Stuart University can't take it because this is the new normal. And of course, in the new normal, you will not claim everything is going to be okay 100%. No, we are going to have misunderstandings. We're going to have our costs. Of course, the costs are very high, but we have to at least try very hard to go with the new normal. Then, when you consider the education we are talking about, basing on the informal and formal education as Chief Guest had said, we are considering what education is helping. Education is a source of knowledge. One, since education is a source of knowledge, someone should stay somewhere, more relaxing, eating, and doing. That is not going to be effective, and that is not helping. Then secondly, education is a platform for very many different things. That is research. People get engaged in societies. People get engaged in different things. So the more you say education should wait, the more you're holding a lot of things. Because we have seen different universities having students on different platforms, and they are engaging them. So the more you say education should wait, the more you're affecting different things that happen in the process of education. Still, because of different habits that have been happening in societies, especially look at the lockdown we have been. For a few times we have been in this lockdown. Learners have chose to do a lot. Learners have chose to misbehave in any way. They have chose to drop out of schools. They have chosen to, poverty has increased. So we think if you go for education, according when we started online learning, we have been engaged for time. At least you are engaged, you have what to do, you have something to do. So it helps out instead of staying somewhere without being engaged. It is better you get engaged on online learning, which is going to help for the country to go ahead. Then, on the issue of education should wait, it shouldn't wait. That is why it is. But accordingly to the university officials, to the school officials, to the government, it should at least try very hard to make sure that when online learning has started, everyone has participated, because it will be very bad when some people are studying and some are not. When some people had paid tuition, they are engaged studying, and some people had paid tuition, but they are not studying. It also looks bad. So it is the duty of now that the university officials, school officials, to help out. So as everyone, every student, wherever they are, they can access online learning. And that can happen because the university can work on it, and it has been working on it. It can also help students to access different networks. Number one, students who are around the university can access Wi-Fi. Students who are around around the areas where they can access different platforms, they can be helped by the university system, the administrators, so as they can also at least access. There is a claim of saying they can also help out in giving handout copies, documents, all that. Because what I know, if a student can stay on WhatsApp the whole day, that very student can stay on WhatsApp to receive notes. So it is now the duty of the lecturers, the duty of the lecturers, the duty of the officials to make sure at least they can use all the reliable sources for the learners to access different documents, to access their work, to access their notes and all that. Still, learners, it is also our duty, it is also our obligation, because if you tell a university chancellor to say, no, we are not going to study because we don't want to go online, he's going to say, okay, fine, because he got what he wanted a long time ago. He's now a vice chancellor, he's now a chancellor. It is now your duty as a learner to at least make sure that you can fit in the situation. If they say we have posted, we have notes on WhatsApp, this platform, you can join in. At least you try very hard. So as when they say no, online learning didn't work, you say, but at least I had tried my level best to access all that was going on, but I failed. At least when they're holding people accountable, you as the learner, you're not held accountable, because I am very sure that those parents who are ready to clear tuition, who are ready to give you data, who are ready to buy you any gadget you want, but you as the learner, what do you have in mind? What are you thinking about? When you feel like, no, I cannot go online, now it is you tarnishing the situation. It is you breaking the process. Because if the university is ready to help you out get notes, to help you out access different platforms, so as at least you can get engaged. If a parent is ready to buy you data, to access those things, so it is now the learner that you're going to choose what you like. You're going to choose what is going to help. Because the more you say, I cannot go online, the more you're tarnishing everything. Now we are counting 1 year when we have been in lockdown. Count on a situation that you've been doing online, and now you're in your second, in your first year, third year. So that means you're making a step ahead. So we cannot wait that education should wait, yet we have other alternatives. We have different alternatives that we can use to access those things we have been accessing physically. So as me personally, I would wish that we as the learners, because we are the most people needed in this, we should at least adhere to what is happening. If they tell you they have posted notes, go and get the notes instead of spending the whole day on WhatsApp making noise and telling people how online learning is not working, how everything is tarnished. You should at least try very hard to get involved in the situation. Then, according to me, there are also the university officials. The university officials should also at least make sure that whatever is happening is known by different people, so as some people should not be left behind. If it is going physical to different areas where people are coming from far, they should do that. If it is to address the media always, they should do that, so as people can get so much involved, people can get to know what is taking place, what is happening. Then on the costs counting to the online education, yeah, the costs are very many, but we can at least, as a university, they had brought an idea of zero rating. So if they can still continue on that, it is going to help learners, because now learners will easily access different platforms, irrespective of they don't have the gadgets, they can run to different areas, irrespective of they cannot buy smartphones for themselves, they can do it with a friend. So I think everyone has a role to play in the pandemic. Everyone has a role to play in this process, and it can help out if everyone plays their role very well and helps whoever needs to be helped. Thank you so much. I beg to submit.
Thank you very much, Doris. These were fruitful deliberations. I want to ask every one of you in attendance to check your microphones. We are trying to clear our backgrounds so as when someone is submitting, then we are in position to get every bit of the message. Doris, I have a question for you. I have two candidates campaigning for Guild presidency. That is candidate A and candidate B. Candidate A comes to you and this is what you say in quotes. I don't have a smartphone because I am broke. This candidate answers, try to get one, it's the only way to go. Candidate B answers, it's okay, I will defend your rights to education. Who is a great leader to you, who actually deserves your vote?
Candidate A.
Why?
Because if someone advises you that this is the only way to go and this is the only option we have, that is a better person because you also get the zeal to at least try very hard to fit in the situation.
What makes candidate B not your favorite one?
What makes candidate B not the favorite one is because you will not tell me to wait, and when the world is going ahead, I should sit back and wait when there is an option I can take.
Wow. Thank you very much, Atumanya Darton. The debate is going on smoothly. We have, like I said, go to the chat room and have your submissions. We shall read them because, by the way, people are even reading them. Thank you very much, our great university. The only way to begin, for how long shall we remain acting locally? Embracing technology was good, but maybe the way it was formulated, some students have been left out due to many challenges of rapid technological advancements. They have been caught offside, considering all those. If the university minded about offering quality and inclusive education, students, yeah, I get the point. Yeah, continue with your messages in the chat room. After all, they are accessible by everybody. We are welcoming our fourth, even before. Doris, are you on? Doris, I am making a research here. Doris, are you on?
Yes, I'm still on.
Okay. Did you write down the question I was asking previous speakers?
Yes.
Okay. What is your take? Knowing what to do and knowing how to do it, which one is better than the other?
Knowing how to do it.
So you're saying knowing how to do it is better than knowing what to do. Okay, thank you. Let's welcome Magara James, a representative from the Faculty of Business, Economics and Governance. James, you're welcome. James, your microphone is off.
Thank you very much, the moderator. In my presentation of 10 minutes, it may not require the moderator to ask his question of knowing what to do and knowing what to do with, because I believe my presentation will include and show my side. I thank all the speakers who have presented, and I believe we are really moving towards achieving what we are looking at. The rationale of today's debate is basically Okay, we are actually aiming at looking at what can work better to see that education goes on. Well, looking at what is happening currently, I believe that the LODCs, most of the LODCs, low developed countries, are found in Africa. And as a matter of fact, we have our very, very many challenges that are surfacing us and limiting us from achieving various things. But one thing that I cannot remember, that I cannot fail to remember, is the fact that civilization started from Africa. And civilization started from Egypt. Then it went to Greece and that way. So why, if civilization began here, why then should we be left behind? That is a very, very major question of concern that needs to be addressed. Now, look, my debate will move like this. I will analyze the status quo in the context of the motion, and from the status quo, I will show what is done, what is in place, what is it put in place, and I'm going to show the status quo, what is the missing link within the current status that we are in, and how that missing link can actually be addressed. I thank the Dr. Medard, who has analyzed and given the credit that education must continue and given out all the importances like the socio-economic development and the like. Yes, education must go on, but how should it go on? Let me come back on. Let me come back to Uganda, and I come back to Bishop Stuart University. This is what is happening. In March, we were told to get back home because of the pandemic situation. And as a matter of fact, we all adopted and went home. But I need to remind you that immediately when the pandemic started, schools in the up countries, rather schools in the more developed countries, did not stop at any cost. They did not stop at any cost because they had it. Now, our university also, with the intellectuals and people making research, sat down and implemented a strategy of looking at how they can fulfill or how we can fulfill the major objectives of the university and complete the semester. And now, I believe and see the fact that in the implementation strategy, now this is what is happening. In the implementation strategy of the university, there is a missing link. And the link that is missing was getting the clear information on the status of the students. How are the students, the readiness of the students to adopt the online study? That is the missing link on the side of the management. There was no any thorough research to identify those factors that would limit students to adopt this online study. That is from the university. And from the side of the students currently, as a very good observer, the missing link from the side of the students is the attitude. Imagine you are chatting with someone on WhatsApp. I have been chatting with some students on WhatsApp. They tell me, James, please, I'm still at home and I'm in the village. Please, can you help me and register me on VLOE? I tell them, no, I don't do that. That is done by the system. Okay. If you can't do that, help me in any way. I tell the student, the same network you're using to chat with me on network.
Can we all hear what James is saying? James, you seem to be off.
I think I'm still in class because I had got disconnected. I don't know why, but so you receive calls. We can't manage submitting this way. That is the missing link. There is something to do with the attitude of the students. Now, this is what should be done. This is what we are looking at. There are very many distance learning techniques that can be adopted. But the success of any distance learning where we also have the online learning depends on the organization and the clear results. My argument here is you analyze who are going to adopt that online study and how are they going to adopt it. And then still you create awareness. For Bishop Stuart University, in this implementation strategy, I believe all the class coordinators would have received, the same orientation as the lecturers, because the class coordinators are the people who directly reach all the students in their particular classes. So I think because that did not happen very well, that's why you are seeing messages like from Wanda Chris, who is arguing how are we going to actually be inclusive in this. Now, let me give a way on how we can actually address an issue of the attitude of the students for as far as the online study is concerned. There should be a measure put in place to let the students know and understand what are the minimum requirements for someone to study online. So students think that studying online is something very huge. So there should be a clear identification and awareness creation to the students such that they can know that studying online is something not very, very much costly. One, you need a computer. When I talk of a computer, it is not a guarantee that you have a laptop or a what computer. No. Smartphones are portable computers. They can do all what a computer does, a personal computer does. Only that for them, they are not multitask whereby you can do this and do the other one at the same time. But a portable computer is a smartphone, and I believe our students can actually access to internet. Access to internet, we remember in the implementation strategy of the university, they were mentioning about zero-based.
James? Okay, put on your microphone and continue. James, put on your microphone.
Okay. My microphone is on. I've been talking about need to have access to internet. I've mentioned about a computer. I have mentioned about access to internet. And the last fundamental thing on the three principles that are needed is the attitude. Students need to believe that we can actually study online. Studying online requires you to know how to compose a message, how to use an email, and these are the things that students are doing. Now, if a student argues that for me, I don't know how to use an email, but students have emails, they just end up using them as Google accounts, and that's all. So the attitude should be changed. For the university, we are going to conduct exams. Yes, it is not just the case of Bishop Stuart University, no. Very many universities are heading this year, and we do not need to see anything like a dead year. I think since we have missing links in the implementation strategy by the university, we request if it was possible that a student who has cleared at least 50% of the tuition be considered sit these exams, and maybe we see that his results are coming in black such that in the following semester that student clears. That is my argument. I think I'm answering the question of Wanda Chris. Now, the patron has been asking a question of knowing what to do and knowing how to do it. I think knowing how to do it is the best thing. Someone knowing what to do just ends there. You just know what to do, but if you don't do it, now what is that? Okay? You need to know how to do it. So when you know how to do it, that one becomes very, very much easier. If we adopted the online study, each and every student got told that it is okay. It is not something very huge for you to study online. It is not something very huge for you to log in into your VLE system. It is not something that is very impossible to have to adopt the blackboard classroom. By the way, the most convenient study is a study of using a blackboard classroom. We don't have it at Bishop Stuart, but it is in other universities. I was mentioning it, like we have it in Nicole College in the States, Kansas. Blackboard classroom, you interact. The only thing that you cannot do is just touching each other, but interaction is there. You share the notes, you meet with your lecturers. Now, the most important difference that we can understand here between online study or the class or what I may call online class is that for online class, a student must be self-paced student, a student who has that heart of doing things by himself. Not this student who needs a coursework done and then they just rate him on the page of the group. He doesn't know how it was done. Online requires hands-on. In fact, I disagree with the argument of Mr. Andrew, who submitted that this thing is likely to bring out half-baked. No, it is not only bringing employable people, but it is bringing out people who can actually do it and who can acquire very many skills, but only if it is very well implemented. So I urge the university to analyze and look in the implementation strategy, and still I urge the university to create avenues such that students can be, the attitudes students can be changed. They understand that this thing is simple, convenient, cheap, affordable, and it can be adopted. I believe with this presentation, I will rest my case here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James Magara. Attitude. Wow. James Magala talked about attitude. Attitude. All right. We get you. I am happy you answered my question. And I already know your stand. James Magala says knowing how to do it is better than knowing what to do. Ninyikiriza Gloria is a representative of Faculty of Nursing and Health Sciences. Gloria, are you there? Gloria, put on your microphone. Put on your microphone, be in a calm place. Gloria?
Yes.
You have the podium. You have the podium. Speak to us, Gloria.
I'm Gloria. I'm Gloria Ninchereza from the Faculty of Nursing Sciences, doing a degree in nursing science. The topic today, this has been that in developing countries, education should not wait no matter the circumstances. According to my faculty, you realize we do a lot of practical than theory. And the reason why I support the topic today is normally we believe that practice makes perfect. And so if education doesn't continue, some of us are likely to forget what we had learned. Some of us are likely to drop out of schools. Believe that really education in developing countries should not wait no matter the circumstances. Thirdly, when the education system does not continue, there is unemployment. And that means some of us are going to fail to sustain ourselves. Most so, our parents get tuition. Some of them are teachers, some of them are lecturers, and that means if education does not continue, they will not be given their salaries, and so we shall not get tuition. So at that point, we shall be forced to leave school because we do not have tuition. Again, I also say that education should not wait because we all understand that education leads to economic growth of a nation. Reason being, when someone is educated, that means they are innovative, and so they're able to become co-creators. But if education has to wait, that means there is no innovation, there is no co-creation. That's why I'm saying education should not wait. It's because education itself brings equality. So if we are to wait until COVID pandemic has ended, then there will be a large difference between social classes in terms of income and in very many other things. Education should continue because basically education is the key to success. Education itself makes us confident. So sometimes you realize if we finish a lot of time without being in school, some of us, we become shy to the extent that we can't even stand in public and express ourselves. Yes, education, still, it should not wait indeed. Because education, when we study and graduate, we get self-dependence. We started depending on our own selves. Right now, if we do not study, we are still students. But if we study and finish, we are no longer students. And at that point, we are able to provide needs of our own selves. We don't need to ask someone, I need this, I need this, I need that. That's why I am standing and saying that education should not wait no matter the circumstance, because no one right now knows how COVID is going to be, how it is going to end, and for how long it is going to last. That's why I'm saying education should not wait no matter the COVID pandemic, no matter the circumstances. Because realize in my faculty, we've already lost like 3 students just because we've been there, we've not been doing anything like a study. So people are like, what are we doing? What's wrong? What is it all about? People have dropped out of school. And that is why I'm saying, real, we need to at least be in school. Some of us have already forgotten what we studied because we are not practicing it.
We seem to have lost Gloria.
When the interns finished, gap now. That means if education had continued, this gap would be already filled with the next interns. That's why I am saying that education should not wait, because right now we have a lot of people who do not have intern doctors or intern nurses or intern medical workers to work upon them. And if education keeps people dying because they do not have enough medical workers to work upon them. Also, if as a developing country, Uganda is a developing country, we well know. So if education waits, that and so we should decline economically. We decline it every door. Right now, if we are in real sense, most of us, we have, right? We've already begun looking for what to eat and we are not getting it. Just because we're not earning. And obviously, that itself brings a decline at the national level as well. Education still should not wait. Reason being, most of us right now, if you're in the community and you're a finalist, you don't have any document that shows that you've finished your level, your education level, I mean. That means you're not even allowed to participate, because if they're saying they want a document of a senior six, a person has finished senior six, and for you in your senior six, you've not completed, that means that job you will not go for it because you do not have a certificate of a senior six leaver. So that's why I am standing and saying that education continue, so that it gives us space, it gives us chances to participate in different opportunities available. Yes, education should continue, because if education continues, there will be gender equality. We all realize that girl children, as in females, we're always at a risk. We are so dead. In this very COVID pandemic, most of us have married. If they are pregnant, they will be married. Some of them have not even come back to complete the courses. And that means they will be giving a large chance to the males to take the opportunities, hence creating gender inequality. Because that will mean that most males, for them, they will continue, because for them, they always have that chance. And because ladies, for them, always at all the risks, most of them will get married, and that means most people will be educated males, and educated and will be giving a high chance for gender high education. Yes, I am saying education to continue, because you realize most students are not used to staying with their parents. And now, what their parents, if education doesn't continue, that means students who do not have some documents to allow them to do some jobs will be home with their parents. That means the parents. And that itself will bring all these organizations, all the
Yes, Gloria.
in homes. All that thing also drop the industrialization level of the nation. That's
Thank
making
you.
the nation slide back economically and socially. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Gloria, you had a lot of disruptions. Nevertheless, we have picked a lot of sense from your submission. I have a message from Shumbusha Francis. Thanks BSU and all the speakers here. If we speak the reality, no one hates e-learning, but most of us who aren't supporting it, we base on the fact that it's not yet favorable. To make this favorable comes about when the university, stakeholders and students sit and negotiate. For example, For example, in our faculty, nursing, we pay over 2.16 million for physical education, physical lectures, practicals, but now, if this money is reduced, students will be able to buy smartphones, buy data, move to some distances okay. It's a very long message. I am happy every one of you is able to read it. I can see time isn't my friend. I might not read the whole of it, but I will encourage you to tap in the chat room and read all his submission. There is sense. And like I said, we have university authorities in the house. Trust me, it's not that we are wasting time. They are noting whatever is being submitted and they will give us answers. Could be after today, but trust me, we shall get feedback from the university. Thank you, Gloria. I can summarize your submission that our heads are not tins to fill, but fire to be ignited. She's saying we should not relax, because if we do, then there will be gaps. So we should continue under all circumstances. Gloria, what's your answer? What to do and how to do it? Which one is better?
How to do it.
Okay.
How to
Thank
do it.
you. Thank you very much. We have only 30 minutes to finish this debate. So we have a lot to do within 30 minutes. I'm going to pick the first two attendees who are too sharp to take their first positions and have their submissions. Can you raise your hand or show any interest if you know how to do it? I never wanted to personalize. I am giving it just a second. Okay, Shumbusha Francis. Shumbusha Francis, you're welcome. You have 3 minutes. Put on your microphone. Put on your microphone. Shumbusha Francis, okay,
Yes,
we are
can
with
you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, now for me, I want to thank everybody there who is present today. But now I want to inform you members, I want to change attitude. Now this is Uganda. People out there have been doing this thing every day and every night. Now I want to change attitude and cope up with the change. Now if this corner remains, what shall we do? It means that all the departments in Uganda will remain, there will be a gap where we shall have no workers. For example, when this COVID came, Uganda coped up and some industries started producing sanitizers. So it means us universities, we should cope up with the change and start studying online. Otherwise, I want to thank you for being there. And you have to think about it. The university should reduce on this cost because there are services that we will not be using. If this is services, the money is chopped off, it means we shall get back our money and buy equipment and we'll start off. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a summary. Thank you very much, Shumbusha Francis. Do we have any other? Can I see any interest there? Edison Nwarinda? Edison Nwarinda, are you in class? Edison Nwarinda, I can see you have the interest here shown, but your microphone is off. Check your microphone. Okay, I am leaving Edison Warinda. His microphone seems to be off. May I have another one? Doris, put off your microphone. Summary. Summary. Your microphone is off. How do I lecture people to put on their microphones? I am bothered. Summary, I have you now. Good afternoon, you're in class.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, I came in late, but I'm sure I'll submit. So my question is about, okay, it's about the campus. Well, the students are willing to do the online classes, but the problem is with the university. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So the problem is that most of the lecturers promise lectures, yet they don't do the lectures. Yet the students have bought their data, they are waiting for the lectures. So how best are they going to make sure that they do a good flow of their program?
Okay.
I'm just asking. I don't even know whether there is an administrator in this meeting, but I'm just asking.
We do have a lot of them. And like we say, this is research. So we expect a feedback from the university. Due to time, of course, not being our friend, these people might reply through our notes boards and or maybe our social media platforms, the students' forums. But at the end, we shall have a feedback from the university. For that, I am sure. Like we are saying, we continue to say, this is research. I hope I am done with the attendees. I can see many of you, you have shown interests, but as well, I want to say you have challenges with your microphones. Peterson? Peterson, you can see your microphone is off as well. I will challenge IT department, Bishop Stuart University. We need to organize a lecture and teach people how to manage their microphones during Zoom engagements. I hope. Bruce, I can see your microphone is on and you have the interest shown. Okay, I want to go back to a special guest. I can see we have a few minutes remaining. I might not attach myself to the attendees. There are many, but you will forgive me because you had issues with your microphones and I wanted to pick only two. Next time, the better. We shall not have many panelists and you will have chances as well to speak your minds. I still believe the chat room solves this problem. If your microphone did not allow you, but you had a lot to speak, please type it. We are going to read it and then the action will be made. Can I welcome Dr. Medard Twinamatsko?
Thank you very much.
You have 10 minutes to give rebuttals.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our dear modulator, for the far that we've moved and for the panelists as well as the attendees for quite good contributions towards this important debate. I will utilize my 10 minutes in this way. One, I would want to appreciate the words of Nelson Mandela, where he mentioned that education is a powerful tool if we want to generate change in the world today and tomorrow. That means there is no way we can avoid to move forward and transform our communities through education in all its definition. Number two, I realized that a number of guests that are participating in this debate are really very supportive of the education front that the world is taking, and more particularly by Bishop Stuart University. I would like to note that the beginning is not always easy. It is very important to appreciate the challenges at the beginning. And I would like to use an analogy of an aeroplane when it is setting off to get started. We always have to be alerted on making sure that you have switched off all the devices. You are alerted on fastening your seatbelt. You are alerted on not making any unnecessary commotion in the plane. You are prepared for it to take off. And I want to believe that where we are at the moment, we are actually on that stage of preparing to take off. Because as you realize that there are various levels of development that we need to embrace, starting from the rudimentary way of doing things up to a society of high level of mass consumption, where we have gone through pre-takeoff and takeoff stages, and we are now there. Since developing countries are not living in an island, they are actually living in the global village. There is no way we can avoid online engagement. And as one of the writer has mentioned, it is actually a panacea of addressing this crisis of COVID-19. Because there is no way universities are going to avoid online classes, it's a very necessary tool that starts with challenges, but we need to see how to embrace it. Because when you look at the cost-benefit analysis of the challenges that may come alongside failure to take off and waiting for educational institutions to open, we are going to get a lot of challenges in terms of psychological retardation of our students, in terms of social immorality rising, where many young girls and young boys are engaged in premarital sex and sexual immorality. And we have seen a very quite number of young girls getting to early pregnancies. That should be avoided through continuous engagement of learners. We also need to understand that there is a critical point of engaging all stakeholders who are involved in this process. I think one of the panelists talked about that. Like Socrates and Aristotle mentioned, if we want to have a fair society, if we want to achieve justice in society, every player must play their role and play it well. So we need to engage all the stakeholders, conduct a very good feasibility study that will inform the way we implement activities in our public institutions, but also in the domains of other society. I also want to observe from this discussion that we now understand that there are levels of engagement that may not go online, that may need a blended approach. So developing countries have a chance now in their design of e-learning platforms and e-learning policies. They need to include the approach of the pedagogy approach of blended learning, so that online is matched with physical interface where the standard operating procedures must be observed. As you realize, for example, we cannot have exams online at the moment because the monitoring technology is very inadequate in developing countries, but also for practical subjects where simulation has not been adopted very well. We might need to provide room through which we don't allow education to wait, but allow these students to move forward. Then we also need to appreciate the concept of globalization. What we are talking right now is that developing countries, for example, let me pick a key statistic for Canada. For adult people who have gone above a high school, they are standing at 56%. But when you compare that with Uganda's environment, where only 13%, and some reports come to 9.4% of people who have been able to access university education, you realize that developing countries still have a long way to go, and therefore cannot wait for things to normalize when the world is moving very fast and we are living in the same global village. The other issue that is picked from the discussion and from the panel, the submissions, is the issue of a very strong infrastructure system, that universities now have to use their budgets effectively to create a very strong ground for infrastructure development. These should be discussions that can be at national level, geared by National Council for Science and Technology, but also the universities at a micro level need to invest heavily in e-learning, because now e-learning is something that we may not avoid, that we need to embrace and move forward. There is no way we are going to hold our educational progresses in the anticipation that things are going to be fine. COVID, like I mentioned in the beginning, when I was giving my keynote address, I said it might be any other disease that we might live with for life. So there is nothing to me called post-COVID time, because COVID has come at the time when we were not aware. It is here to stay. We'll get the vaccines, but we will live with it. So the measure is, how do we adapt other than mitigating it? Yeah, mitigation is fine, but the biggest percent would be on adaptation and adoption of modern technologies that are likely to help us move forward. And the second last point here, in the interest of time, is in line with the mindset change of our learners, but also of our teachers. We don't need to pinpoint only on the mindset change of learners and forget the teachers who are already locked down cognitively. So I want to think that my colleagues out there who are listening, but also our dear students, we need this paradigm shift of the mind to understand that whether you want it or not, we must go e-learning. We must embrace online teaching. We must create a very positive will. Even when we are talking to students, we show them that this is possible, because it is possible. Like I mentioned in my keynote speech, many countries have gone to this. Why not us? We cannot be left behind, because digital migration is the way to go, and we must live by that. And lastly, I would like to also mention that this process requires us to fit in it. Universities could not wait for us to say, let's first, do a lot of analyses and research and all that. Research can be done progressively at this point when we are addressing a critical challenge that affects lives. There are certain policies that differ in nature. They are what we call reactive policies, but there are those that we call proactive policies. Proactive policies will take place in a rational way when the situation is normal. But in situations of this kind, we need reactive policies, but which are also informed by certain situations, but also consider the issue and element of time of not compromising the way things are done. Because universities are at different levels of e-engagement. Therefore, we must understand how to move fast, but sure, and be able to engage all stakeholders and bring them on board. Because at this time, It's when we are going to understand and differentiate universities from high schools. Like I mentioned, universities must pioneer different roles that include learning and teaching, research and innovation, and community engagement. Without defining yourselves in those three domains, you qualify to be a high school, not a university. And therefore, universities must stand strong beyond the ivory tower so that learning and teaching is supplemented by the other aspects which are also important aspects of education. And if we do that, we will move on the right direction, that our world will be counted among those worlds that we call giant nations today. I thank you very much, Mr. Modulator, and I want to thank all the panelists, the attendees, and the management of the university for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. God bless you.
Thank you, Doctor. I never wanted you to leave. There is something I wanted to ask you. There is this peculiar question I have been asking. If only you could shed light on how and what. Thank you.
This question is very interesting. And thank you for bringing it on board. But I want to observe that the two move together, the what and the how. You cannot do the how without knowing the what. So you need both of them in order to facilitate your process of the end, because the end will justify the means. I thank you.
Thank you very much. There is this pronoun it. If you say how to do it, there is already it. So you cannot know how to do something you don't know. So it proves you already know what. So what comes first? I believe the university has given what. The university, and that is Bishop Stuart University, has narrowly tackled on what to do. Technology. And I want to say, as students, you have the ultimate responsibility to find how. With that, I don't sideline the university's efforts to teach you how, but now that you already know what, use your efforts as any university student, like the doctor is asserting. Show the world that you can innovate, try to teach the world and yourself as well on the modalities of how. Thank you very much, Doctor. I want to say you deserved millions, probably much dollars and euros from Bishop Stuart University for great lessons you conducted today, for the minds you changed, the attitudes you altered positively. Thank you very much. But definitely we cannot afford paying you. But maybe I will invite Reverend Mukundane Charles to give a vote of thanks to all the attendees, the panelists, and tell us the way forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much, the participants and all the panelists, for very brilliant ideas you've given to the people that have attended this webinar. I also want to take the honor to appreciate our special guest, Dr. Medard Twinamatsko, for the knowledge really you've given to us. It has been so good and very educative. How I wish we had much more time for you to give to us that dissemination. It was really very, very, very important and very educative. And I want to promise that we shall have another time for you. We're not going to spare you, Doctor, because you still have a lot to give to the world. And it becomes knowledge when it is shared. You don't keep it alongside yourself, and you call it knowledge. So it must be shared, it must be disseminated. And so we thank you very, very, very much on behalf of the university and on my own behalf and the organizers of this webinar. I want to thank the moderator and the patron for Debate Club, Bishop Stuart University, Mr. Chrispus Munzira, and all the panelists, as I have earlier said. Now, students and all that have participated, thank you also for your submissions, for your contributions. We are in an era that is electronic, and nothing else we have to do but only to accept and move on, because as someone said that if you do not change with change, change will change you. So there are some of the people definitely who are resistant at change, but much as they are resistant, change definitely will change them. You cannot resist change to the last hour. The world will leave you behind. So I want to encourage, especially the students, to embrace this technological change. We are in a fourth industrial revolution, and we need to embrace change and then see the modalities of how to cope with the change. Definitely, change in most cases generates controversy. Some people allow to change so quickly and easily, while others are saying, for us, we want to remain in our traditional ways of doing things. But I want to encourage every one of us to move on together. Change, some writers said that change takes place everywhere, but at various levels. And definitely in the technological era here, there are people, I was interacting with some students who are planning to come for the first year. Some of them were like, me, I have my smartphone, the Katochi. I don't have a smartphone. My parents may not be able to buy me a smartphone. But I said, we may have nothing to do. If they are struggling to pay tuition for you, then they should also struggle to buy you a smartphone. Actually, sooner or later, Bishop Stuart University is going to make it mandatory for the fresh students, everyone to have a computer. We are actually in the final touches of some service provider who is going to provide iPads on a very cheap price, which will help parents to have to purchase iPads for their sons and daughters. And once this is purchased, it will ease the work of the lecturers and the students. In fact, we are saying that even the continuing students will need to purchase these computers, but for the first year students, it will be mandatory. And so you see where we are going. So those that are still lagging behind, we are encouraging you to be on track with us. Otherwise, we can see very many students are very positive about this, even when there are a few others that are still saying, do this, do the other. But we are very happy for those that are very positive. We thank you. We encourage you to come on board and move with the world. The world is moving seriously. Don't be left behind. And the university is ready to give you ways of how you can move with it. For example, the computers I've talked about, you may not need cash. You can pay in installments. but they will not say pay, like if it costs 1 million, you will not pay the entire 1 million at the same time. You may pay like 200,000 shillings, 200,500 shillings for one semester, and another semester you pay another 200,000, 100 shillings, and another semester until you pay for your computer, so that you can also be in class with others. I want to thank you once again. I want to invite you, because soon we are going to have another debate, and we are inviting every one of you to attend. We shall give you a link and inform you the date, but it will be next week. I wish students fruitful examinations, the continuing students, which they are going to begin next week on 7th. I wish parents also a good time as they struggle to get fees for their sons and daughters. And I wish members of staff good preparations as they prepare examinations for the students. Thank you very much, and may the good Lord bless you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Charles Mukondane, Public Relations Officer of this university. I have to read this question because I am sure we have authorities, and these questions you have to write them because the students will need feedback. You said there will be 0 rating, but we are using our own data. I hope this will actually attract a feedback from the authorities in the university later. I want to thank you. I know the beginning is always hard. It's normal to feel worried some of the times, but if you know, even when I am worried, but I have to go, then you join the masses and you desist not to keep behind. I am sure we are facing a few challenges, and I pray that we don't term them to be problems. These are simple, temporary, and overcomable challenges. This debate hasn't left anyone with any discombobulation. We have gotten clarity, and trust me, there is some work done today. I have been Munzira Chrispus, your modulator. I am welcoming someone to lead us in a concluding prayer. If you're interested in praying with us, praying for us, show interest from the audience. I can see Auntie Kuribakanya Rose. Are you ready to lead us in a concluding prayer? I can see okay. Derek Aditugavira. Derek Aditugavira, you can lead us in a concluding prayer. Madam Rose, you can lead us in a prayer.
Shall we pray? Father, our Lord and Savior, we thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to deliberate on different issues that concerns us as Ugandans, that concerns us as students, that concerns us, oh God. We bless your name, oh God. We thank you, Lord, for Dr. and all the students that have participated and all that have contributed, dear Lord. We pray that you bless them, oh God, and bless all of us, oh God. Thank you, Lord, for the coordinator Thank you for the modulator. Father, we pray that you will bless them, oh God. And Lord, continue to speak to us. Continue to teach us on how to change. Continue to help us, help the students, help the university as they integrate this new system. In Jesus' name we have prayed. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Then I will authoritatively say, we are ending this right away. God bless you.